All right, welcome back. And yep, you're going to hear some noise in the background because there's work going on next door, and I've been trying to navigate my way around it. I lucked out with the first two videos. The first one I just stopped before the noise started up again. This one I was just getting set up, and then the noise started again. I'm like, well, I could wait an hour, or I could do it now, or it could be half an hour, 20 minutes, 2 hours. I just don't know. So, anyways, we're going to discuss what's going on in the hockey world as we start having stuff to talk about. First off, Travis Hamonic has opted out. Now, I keep seeing on Twitter people saying, hey, I don't want to see people come down on him about it. I don't want to see people get mad at him about it. Who's getting mad at a guy right now for saying, all right, the NHL's coming back, but I don't feel safe because my daughter has an underlying respiratory condition that if I catch this, it could transfer to her and she could have major issues. So I haven't seen anybody mad at Hamonic yet, and yet I've seen a lot of people like, "Don't you dare get mad at him." Nobody's mad at him. And Sven Baertschi has opted out. He doesn't feel like he should be coming back at this point in time, and so the Vancouver Canucks have added Cole Lind to their roster for training camp that originally was left off. And honestly, I would be interested to see if Cole Lind can maybe fight his way into the lineup a little bit. Now, of course, Twitter being Twitter and all of that. See, and then the noise stops because I said something. Twitter being Twitter and all that, of course. Brock Besser, there's been a lot of rumors about whether or not he's going to find his way out of Vancouver. And based on the information that I have, there might be something to it. And Brock is very happy in Vancouver. Brock is not asking for a move. But there may very well be one of those situations going on right now where when there's smoke, there's fire. And that's as far as I can go with it. Brock Besser, we'll see what happens, but the speculation's ramped up. I will say this. I'll say the same thing I said on Twitter last night. If the Vancouver Canucks, to keep cap space, sacrifice Brock Besser, and if we still have Louis Eriksson and Jay Beagle at the price tags they're currently at, eating up $9 million of the cap, my opinion on Jim Benning is going to change considerably going into next season. Where we're at with Vancouver with the salary cap, quite honestly, and I discussed yesterday how like roughly half the teams in the NHL have a cap problem, and Vancouver being one of them. But for Vancouver, if they're going to dig their way out, I don't think trading one of your better younger players, especially when he had a 14-goal season, which is low by his standards, and so a team may very well say, well, based on this year, we think he's only worth this. You don't trade low on Brock Besser. For me, you don't trade Brock Besser. I have a Besser jersey because I like Brock, but we'll see what they do. So here's to hoping he doesn't get traded. Wherever he goes, I'm cheering for him. It doesn't matter. Montreal, Pittsburgh, doesn't matter. I will be cheering for Brock Besser. I'll just have issues with that. I think he has one of the best shots I've ever seen in a live game. I saw Brock play a couple of times, and just his shot is fantastic. So if he goes somewhere else, and of course Minnesota's always going to be the speculation, right? So we'll see what happens. Steven Stamkos got hurt during practice or working up his way to practice, working out. Lower body injury. He will not be at the start of training camp. They're not saying how long that's going to be an issue, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be a long-term injury. So yeah, Stamkos is going to be out because Stamkos must have gone, oh, we're playing hockey. I have to get injured first, and then I can go play hockey because that's how Stamkos does things throughout his career. It's an interesting strategy. We'll see how it works for him. Greg Pattern is out indefinitely for the Minnesota Wild with an upper body injury. So this is the wonders of coming back to a regular news of the day video where we get to hear about who's hurt and who's not. And in this case, we're also adding who's deciding not to play and who is. So Pattern's out indefinitely with an upper body injury. Again, we're going to see a lot of players on these teams and extensive rosters. 4 goalies seems to be the way that most teams are going. So 4 goaltenders on their squads. So we'll see how this goes, but Pattern won't be a part of it. The NHL will be in charge of all injury reports in Phase 4. And there's a lot of talk about this as well. The NHL doesn't want to tell us how bad things are. There's a reason I'm using the panic index emoji there, that magnet, because I think they don't want the media to be panicky. We've already seen that. when the report came out about Austin Matthews, which has never been confirmed. I might want to add, never been confirmed. But when the report came out on Austin Matthews, everybody loses their minds. So obviously the NHL sees this and the absolute sheer panic that goes on with fans and media, and they're like, you know what? We'll just take control of over the whole messaging of injuries during Phase 4. In terms of who's positive and who isn't, they're not going to release that. They'll just say, here's how many tests we've given. Here's how many players have tested positive. At this point, since June 8th, I think it's since June 8th, that's been 28 or 29 players that have tested positive. And again, people can panic. And this is part of the reason why the NHL is saying, yeah, we're not going to disclose exactly who has what. This isn't new, though. Like, how many times in the playoffs have we seen a situation where we don't know who's hurt? And then I saw somebody say, well, we'll know who has it because we won't see any kind of play that might lead to an injury. So we'll know when they're out of the lineup that that's what they have. No. How many times have we seen a player out of the lineup with an injury and then we look back at the previous game, where did they get hurt? And so there's speculation on could have been this play. They took a hit here in the first, but they played the rest of the game. I don't know, maybe it's is it their shoulder? Could it be their knee? Maybe it's an ankle. And so it's nothing new with the NHL not to tell us what the injury is, how long somebody's going to be out. It's not a surprise. Now, Bill Daly has confirmed what we knew. We knew when they went to Edmonton and Toronto when that was coming out that the surge in cases in Nevada and in Las Vegas as well was the reason that the NHL said, all right, we have to move on from Vegas. This is why when all this discussion was around of, okay, it's confirmed, Vegas is in. That's it. Vegas has got it. They're paying the deposits on the hotels. Yeah. And paying the deposits but not publicly announcing it tells you they're going, I don't know. And again, this was a decision between the NHL and the NHLPA. It is possible that Bettman, Daly, and the NHL players were at loggerheads over this. That the players were saying we don't want to go to Las Vegas because the case numbers are too high there. And of course now there's talk of, well, there's issues here in Edmonton, and well, there's problems with Toronto. There's problems everywhere. So it's a matter of just the degree in Vegas was high, and it was all trending in the wrong direction. And no matter what the reason is for that trending in the wrong direction, that's why the NHL ultimately chose not to go to the city of Las Vegas. Now, they were supposed to have pressers today in Edmonton and Toronto, where the cities of Edmonton and Toronto, the Oilers and the Maple Leafs, respectively, were going to discuss details along the lines of how this was all going to work and talk about being named as hubs and all of that. Those press conferences have been delayed. So the NHL came to them and said, wait, we're still working out some stuff with the federal government. So, depending on how this goes, it may change some of the details. And of course, people right away jump on that too. Like, oh, see, the NHL doesn't have a plan because they have to talk to the federal government and iron out details. Oh, everybody's just so amped up emotionally online right now. I do my best to keep things nice and calm and level. And yeah, so they're just going over details. It's not like they're going to come out and go, well, turns out Edmonton and Toronto don't work, so we're going to have the whole thing in Kitimat. I don't know how we're going to have it in Kitimat. I don't even know if there's a building in Kitimat, but apparently, according to the federal government, we can have it in Kitimat or Lake of the Woods. Lake of the Woods is in the running. In the city of Winnipeg, we'd love to have it there, but there's a mosquito problem. So we've decided to have it in Kitimat. Maybe Lake of the Woods will have a couple of games. And the entire thing's going to be played on NHL 20 EA Sports, but every player's going to be their own player. Anyways, expect the press conference probably tomorrow. And then this is newsworthy because the NHL and what the NHL's doing coming up to play in Canada has some Canadians upset. So we've got Canadians where you've got, they might have a spouse on the other side of the border, immediate family on the other side of the border, and so they want to be able to see one another, but there are certain rules in place that make it prohibitive. And NHL players and coming up to Canada to be part of this hub environment and play up here are not going to be under those restrictions. The restrictions NHL players have, though, are pretty clear that they're not going to be leaving the hub. They're not going to be going outside of that bubble, and that it's going to be regulated and that it's going through with provincial regulators. I think it's apples to oranges to compare that with the border being closed. 81% of Canadians agree with keeping the border closed past July 21st. So there's a movement right now in the States among some politicians to try to pressure Canada to open up the border. And Canada's pushing back. Canada's saying no. And Canadians in general are saying no. And because of political situations in Canada being as they are, I think we're going to have another election up here. And if you want to win that election, I'm going to say probably within the next 6 months. If you want to win that election, you're going to vote in favor of keeping it closed and you're going to push to keep it closed. Because again, when 81% of Canadians agree on something, that's rare. I know we're known as being really nice, generally decent people, but the only difference is just the kind of weapon most Canadians have. I don't think there's a huge difference outside of that, and we apologize a lot. Other than that, Canadians and Americans are very, very similar. So getting 81% of Canadians to agree on something is indeed quite rare. And most anybody I talk to agrees that the border is probably going to need to stay closed for a long time. But this does not necessarily prohibit the NHL and from professional sports from having their own setup. And it would be equivalent to me saying, let's just say that I had a bunch of family in the States, which I don't. So I'm going to use myself as an example. And I say, all right, I want my family to come up. And then the federal government going, okay, where's their bubble? Huh? You got to have a bubble, and then you got to make sure you don't deal with other people too. Like it's not the equivalent at all. Basically, for people deciding to come up and visit immediate family, they have to quarantine for 14 days. That is policed, and then then they're allowed to move about, but they have to quarantine for 14 days first. And of course, NHL players are not quarantining 14 days when they arrive in Canada, which may be part of how things fell apart with BC, where Vancouver and BC Health didn't necessarily feel 100% comfortable. We'll see how this goes. It's going to be a very interesting summer, and 3 weeks from today, we should have ourselves some hockey. But we will see other players opting out between now and Monday. And again, I don't think there's going to be any major complaining. I've seen some shade being thrown at Baertschi, but my God, come on, just if he decides not to play, it's fine. I think it's odd that, again, I think just the emotions online right now are a little bit amped up, and I think there needs to be some sort of even temperedness to it. Maybe that doesn't exist. Maybe it's not a thing anymore. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. You can see why, I can't really schedule around the noise next door because it starts, stops. So anyways, thank you guys so much for understanding. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.